Yes, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the UNC Football Show. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones. And AJ, despite it being January 8th, there is still a ton of football to talk about. And I can assure everybody right now that it's not going to slow down anytime soon either. So I'm looking forward to this show. I'm looking forward to coming on here and talking a little football. It does feel weird that there's so much football news right now, but that's what happens when you hire a new coach, and that's what happens especially when the new coach you hire being Bill Belichick, who's yet to even officially announce a majority of his staff. A lot of fluid parts going on the football side right now. Is that probably the most appropriate word to describe it, with fluid, AJ?
In talking with a fellow I won't say prominent, but regular on the UNC beat, there are a couple of us who are completely embedded as much as can be, where it's hard to be really embedded right now because of the program that's in place. Excuse me. They don't have a media relations person yet. So there's nobody to write up hiring pieces. There's nobody to text and say, hey, what can you tell me about this? There are people there. There are people that we could talk to and get some information, but it's a lot more challenging sourcing stuff right now because a lot of my sources are gone.
Yeah.
They've been pushed out the door in the last few weeks. So it just means being aggressive in the right way. It also means being responsible, not reporting stuff because someone else did. Because a lot of that stuff's not true. It means when we do report stuff, making sure we've got three sources and we're rock solid on it, like the Taylor Edwards thing, who was hired and was working at player personnel and then left to Miami. There were people reporting that he never showed up at Chapel Hill. And I had talked to two people that saw him in the Kenan Football Center for more than a week wearing Carolina gear every day. I don't know what the hell happened, but he was there. He was hired, and then he went somewhere else. And I'm not going to, I've heard some things, but it's not enough that I could ever put out there into the discourse. It wouldn't be fair because it's not fully vetted.
Yeah.
So, but he was there. The point is I had to go through certain channels to find that. And now that he's gone, some of those channels aren't there to find out what happened.
Yeah.
So it's really not important to me in the end what happened. It's a small tidbit in the big picture of things. The big picture of things is coaches are being hired. A lot of people are reporting stuff that it's done deal before it's a done deal, like Lombardi's kid, to our knowledge. That deal has not been finalized yet. So I'm not going to run a story saying they're looking to finalize it. I will only run the story once it's been finalized.
Yeah.
Because looking to finalize can be a bit misleading. Because what if it doesn't happen? I just don't want to jump the gun. It's never about being first, it's just about being accurate, because I don't want to operate moving forward on 75% truths. I want to operate 100% truths.
Yeah.
And stuff like this. So there's a crap load going on. He's putting together a staff, and it's going to be a massive staff. So there's going to be a lot of people hired. The player personnel department is going to be massive compared to what it once was. The analysts on the staff, they're going to have more of them than they've ever had before. We're going to be announcing doing hiring stuff for the next month.
Yeah.
Because he's going to continue to hire people. Then there's the transfer portal, which is very active and still ongoing. Kids have until next Wednesday. It's the 6th, Tuesday, the 14th, to enroll. So the portal will die next week. But between now and then, it's going to be very active. And they have a bunch of kids coming in this weekend. They have a linebacker from Alabama in town today. So there's a lot that's still going to go on. We'll be able to move on from that. But Belichick hit the recruiting trail. I know that's one of the things you wanted to hit on first, but he's already hit the high school recruiting trails, loading up on 2026 kids. We've got that going on. So there's a lot of stuff going on with this program right now, far more than I ever recall at this point in the year in January. In fact, football is getting more activity on our site than basketball right now, which is unthinkable. It was unthinkable 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's definitely a very different thing that we're used to seeing, especially like you said, in this time of year where basketball just tends to absolutely dominate the discourse. But again, when you, like I mentioned earlier, when you hire a guy like Bill Belichick and you've got all this new excitement around the program, you got this fluctuation and guys being hired and the portal being what it is now, it's no coincidence that everything
and the rumors.
Top of mind. Yeah, 100%.
And the rumors.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. It's just like every day it seems like something new coming out.
And let me throw this out there about the rumors.
Yeah.
If you go to THI at Heel Illustrated, our Twitter account, at Heel Illustrated, not Heels Illustrated, at Heel Illustrated, and you're wondering why we haven't tweeted about something,
Probably not worth our time.
There's nothing to tweet about. We're not going to go speculation. We're not going to go down that alley. I'd thought about tweeting a couple of things just to kind of stir the pot a little bit because it's very tempting. But Jacob and I hashed it out and wisdom prevailed.
Yeah.
Because if we're not pushing something on that platform, in our world, there's nothing there. Or there's nothing we've confirmed.
Yeah, there's nothing concrete enough for us to even entertain it. No, you're absolutely right. No, yeah.
No, we're not gonna shoot from the hip. We're not gonna run a story because someone said something.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna do all of that stuff. We're not gonna do it.
That's not how we operate.
Now you come to our boards, and so people ask, I'll comment there on our premium board. That's one of the benefits of people being subscribers to our site. But we're gonna let a lot of these rumors just float around and drift off into the sunset.
Yeah, because that's just,
which is what 99.9% of them do anyway.
Yeah, 100%. That's because that's what they are, right? And they're just rumors. So no point in really entertaining it, especially at this stage. So AJ, I want to real quickly before we dive into it, we're on the race for 20K subscribers on YouTube. I think we're about close to 18,200 right now. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. We'd appreciate it. We want to get there. I'd like to get there before the ACC tournament basketball. That's going to be tough to do based on what our average growth rate is. But with your help, by liking, sharing, telling your friends, subscribing, obviously, hitting the notification bell, all that helps with our channel getting more out there to new people. So please do that. Take a second right now. Hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed. Why would you not? Go ahead and do that right now. We'd appreciate it.
And we haven't done this in a while, but we're going to do it now. We know exactly where the line in the sand is, how many subscribers we have on the channel.
Yep.
We also can see who subscribes if we choose to peel away a couple layers. So from this point to 20,000, once we hit 20,000, we're going to go back and randomly choose somebody to win a 1-year subscription to THI for free. And that stuff I was just talking about, you'll get that on the board. You're not going to get it here. You're not going to get it on Facebook. You're not going to get it in a free content article because one of the benefits of being in that community is it's a private community. And I have a little more leeway to say things in there that journalistically I'm not going to say here. So you want some of that stuff, go sign up too, $8.33 a month for a 1-year subscription. But subscribe to our channel now, and you're in the lottery, I guess it is, right? The lottery.
Yeah, the lottery, exactly.
So somebody between now and 20,000 will win a 1-year subscription to THI.
Yeah.
And if we get there, what's today, January 8th? If we get there by February 28th, I'll give you a 2-year subscription.
Oof. I would love to do that. I think I would love to see that. Let's go ahead and do it right now, guys. Like I said,
February 28th, 20,000. So anybody between now and 20,000, if we get there by February 28th, you get a 2-year subscription for free. If it's after February 28th, it's a 1-year subscription for free once we hit 20.
I expect to see a lot of, because we can look at the analytics and see who subscribes on a certain podcast or how many people have subscribed from watching a podcast. I expect to see a big uptick when I go look at the analytics in a couple of days after this podcast comes out.
Minimum of 15 for this show. Minimum.
Yeah, minimum.
That's my projection.
Absolutely. No, I love it. So again, $100 value, $8.33 a month times 12, about $100 value. So
$200 value. And really,
true. If you
on that.
It's a good point. Yeah.
How many times have you seen people comment on the boards lately that, I would pay so much more for this?
Yeah, 100%.
We've been crushing it big time the last 6 weeks. We've been crushing all along, but there's been so much to crush the last 6 weeks, and we've been on it with both teams and recruiting.
Yeah, never stops. Plus, you get access to stuff like David Siss, awesome basketball film reviews, all that kind of jazz. So yeah, big reason to go ahead and sign up. So much you get from
By the way, if I
that.
put this on and look down every once in a while, I'm looking at my phone.
Yeah, he's looking at the text. You never know. Fluid situation, AJ. Something could pop off in 34 seconds, and we'd have to squash this podcast. And
Brian Balcom and Kevin Roy have been told that if something big happens, don't text me. Call me because my phone will illuminate, and we'll hit pause on the show and we'll go deal with it and come back.
Yeah, we'll nuke the podcast.
It's January 8th, and we're doing this with football, which is why we're doing this show, which is the theme of the show, Jacob. It really is that, and you'll get into it in a second. The narrative, what Belichick is telling high school and portal recruits. We're going to talk about that.
Is the meat of the podcast. Great segue, because that's what I want to dive into right now. Obviously, the talk of the last few days, really this week so far, has been Bill Belichick hitting the recruit in Cherlin High School all over the state. We saw him at Jordan High School right down the road, Providence Day. I mean, he is making the rounds and doing stuff by going to these high schools that a lot of people were either very skeptical about him doing or said, oh, no, absolutely not. Heck, you got former players on TV saying it. Can you imagine Bill Belichick sitting in a kid's living room, going to these high schools and talking to them? Well, he's doing that right now. And I think one of the biggest, I think it's a big thing for him because it's showing that he's all in. It's showing he's committed to really doing this. And it shows that, hey, I'm going to go to these high schools across the state. I don't really have to do that on Bill Belichick, but I'm going to do that because it's the best thing for this program for me to build these relationships. I think it's huge, but also at the same time, it's also a massive thing for high school football in the state. So I think it's a big positive all the way around. But the main thing that I want to talk about from that is the messaging that you just mentioned, not only what Bill Belichick is telling these high school kids that he's talking to for 2026 and beyond, but also to the guys in the transfer portal, because he's been very active in the portal so far. Been a little bit more quiet since December 21st. He had that huge run where he just landed a ton of guys from the 16th to the 21st. Went quiet for a little bit, but he has picked up a few commitments, 3 actually, at least at the time of recording this podcast, since January 5th. So we'll talk about that a little bit later too. But
AJ, by the way, part of that's because there was a dead period.
Yeah, there's a dead period. Yeah, I should have mentioned that too.
It opened back up here several days ago, and we've seen 3 kids commit since then.
Which is kind of nice. It allowed us to exhale a little bit with everything going on, not to be 24 locked in. But
not us.
Talk to me real quick about the messaging coming out from Bill Belichick. And before you get into that too, are you surprised to see him making the high school rounds? I was a little bit, but I guess maybe in hindsight, I shouldn't have been.
No, because the more I look into his past, and when I have pockets of time to look back, one of the things that continues to surface is that what made him the best coach in the NFL is how thorough he is. Mm-hmm. He doesn't miss anything. He's as thorough as it gets. So one of the essences, part of the essence of recruiting is to go visit the kids in their schools. I said a few weeks ago, I just can't imagine I'm walking through a high school asking the cafeteria lady, what's this guy like at lunchtime? I know coaches do that. I know that Roy Williams used to sometimes will stop and talk to any people in the school, ask a teacher, what's he like? Just tell me what's he like, which is great. And that's a great way of doing it. And in basketball, the relationships that are cultivated are much deeper because you don't have to recruit as many kids. So I didn't know, but it doesn't surprise me because if you're going to recruit well, you've got to be thorough. What's part of being thorough? Go see them. Go show them that you care. And that's what I'm hearing from some of the high school kids and even some of the portal guys. I'll get on that in a second. But with the high school kids, he came to see me. Mm-hmm. I talked to one kid yesterday. It was yesterday, whose favorite team since he was 4 is the Patriots. And he could not believe that Bill Belichick was standing in front of him, came to see him in his high school. So North Carolina went from completely not on the kid's radar to probably the front runner because of that. And what they're getting from him is that he's not big timing them. He's not talking about all that he's done. He's not wearing the ring. Mac wore the ring. Mac had the $30,000 ring table. Yeah, $30,000 ring table. Nothing wrong with that. Show them what you got. Kids love bling. But these days, bling is great. But I think with Belichick, bling wouldn't wouldn't fit him. He's not a bling guy. He's a brass tacks guy.
Mm-hmm.
He is. Here's what we like about you. Here's how we see you fitting in. Here's what we're trying to create. There's no wasted conversation. And I like that. And I think the kids like it because they get qualified quickly by him, and they can qualify him pretty quickly. It's his approach, the culture he wants to create is not for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And
one of the things we're learning is that, and I told you everybody this when Mac got fired, one of the missions by the school and by the athletic department, by Bubba, was to completely change the football culture. They want a football means everything culture. I said that before Belichick was hired. Mm-hmm. You and I talked about it how many times? Mm-hmm. Well, what we're seeing is a guy who wants to bring kids in who can handle a culture of incredible competitiveness, a results-oriented operation, and a professional operation, meaning that this is your duty. And if you do not live up to your duty, you will not be on the field and probably not last in the program. It's a no BS approach. And that's what North Carolina needs. North Carolina was too soft. Well, there's a reason a lot of 4 stars and some 5 stars haven't panned out at North Carolina, because sometimes, and this isn't my opinion, this is what I'm told to people in the industry, that sometimes they would get the softer 4-star. The kid who thought he can go in there and get on the field quicker doesn't have to compete as hard to get on the field, because if he went to Georgia, he'd be 8th on the depth chart and have to compete with all those guys.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. I'm not saying that's 100% true, but that's what a lot of people say. Belichick wants to change that. Look at how he's recruiting the portal. He's recruiting the same positions.
Mm-hmm.
People think, they're set at linebacker because they've got Amari Campbell back and they've got Kamari House from Washington. Well, there's a linebacker from Alabama visiting. Some coaches say, okay, we got our guy. He's not going to rest on. He wants competition. He wants survival of the best. And that's what he's telling these kids. And the kids who want to grind and the kids who find that appealing are going to be more apt to choose North Carolina now than maybe they were before. And I'm not saying there wasn't competitiveness before. And I am not in any way being detrimental to Mac's program, because I thought Mac had a lot of really good things in his program. Just Belichick's going to run a different one. Mm-hmm. And it's what North Carolina wanted to set out to do. If you're going to make the investment, then make the investment to go all in, or don't make it at all. And we're seeing North Carolina go all in. And now we're understanding why Belichick impressed them so much, because of how he goes about communicating with his kids. I think the fact that he doesn't wear the rings is huge.
Yeah.
I thought the fact that Mac did wear the rings was huge, because it worked for Mac. It fit Mac. It doesn't fit Belichick. So there's a realness to the way he's talking to these kids. And the ones that like it are eating it up. The ones that don't like it, he'll qualify them quickly and not waste his time with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and let me read off a list real quick of a few schools. Just bear with me for a second. Holy Cross, Delaware, East Carolina ×2, Rice, Prairie View A&M, UConn to an extent. These are all schools that Bill Belichick so far in the portal has landed guys from. And the reason I want to bring that up is because of what you just talked about in terms of messaging, and in terms of a lot of people look at that list and say, okay, why is Bill Belichick going out and getting players from lesser schools? On the flip side, you look at it and say, okay, all those guys that we essentially just listed started at the schools they're coming from. Granted, those are smaller schools compared to Carolina. Some of them are even, FCS schools compared to FBS. And a lot of people, fans, I don't think we've seen it as much yet because of the excitement, because of who Bill Belichick is, and because I think a lot of people right now are trusting what he wants to get in what he's going out and landing. But I think eventually, and I have seen it in certain sects of the message boards and on Twitter, where it is a topic of conversation. Like, why is he not going out and signing these starters at Georgia and Alabama and Texas and all these big time schools? And I think the messaging of the culture is essentially why is, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, and I'll let you expand on this, but the culture that he's trying to build is competitiveness. And when you go out and get guys that have started and played significant minutes at smaller schools, when I look at that, AJ, I say, okay, you've started and you've played a lot. So you've earned that starting spot and you have a lot of experience. That checks a couple boxes right there. But when I also look at those kids, I say, okay, I believe it's more than likely if you're a kid coming from a smaller school, if you end up at a school like North Carolina, if Bill Belichick's recruiting, you obviously have talent, but you're going to come in and you're going to want to compete, which is going to build culture because that's what you're used to being at those smaller schools. You're not somebody like those high 4s and 5 stars that maybe don't come in for the right reasons. You're getting the exact opposite of that. Maybe not all the time, but most of the time when you go get kids from schools that we've just mentioned that have started and had good careers at those schools. So what do you make of that? And do you agree that messaging right there of we need to build a culture, a good culture here, and it starts by going out and maybe getting some of those kids that maybe don't on the surface you're kind of like, yeah, I don't really know a lot about. I don't know about that. But I think when you peel back some of those onions and understand what Bill Belichick's trying to do, to me, it makes a lot more sense now because of the messaging coming from him and what we understand. It makes a lot more sense why those kids are maybe being targeted a little bit more than others, to say the least.
As a guy who spent 40 plus years in the NFL, Belichick completely understands that really good players come from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's had a lot of great players in his teams in the past that came from places that people never heard of. So one of the things about football that I find fascinating, is totally different than basketball, is a lot more kids in football, players in football, are completely overlooked coming out of high school. And they go places, they become NFL players or big-time college players. And so many of the ones that are in the Rivals 250 never, ever amount to anything. Mm-hmm. It's because maybe those guys have stopped growing. They don't love football. One of the most underrated aspects of player evaluation and the most difficult is to determine how much a kid loves football. Mm-hmm. Loving football isn't Saturday running out of the tunnel and banging people. Loving football is the weight room in January. Loving football is working on ball skills in February in the indoor facility because it's too cold outside. That's loving football. Loving football is being in the film room on June 15th after running a 2.5-hour OTA. That's loving football. And there are kids that love football at all levels. And they are the ones that go in somewhere and they excel and they become all this and all that. Willie Lampkin loves football. When Willie Lampkin came from Coastal Carolina, people were like, why are you bringing in a dude that's 5'11", and he's an offensive lineman from Coastal Carolina? Well, he was the best blocker in college football this year. Mm-hmm. And he was my number 2 Carolina when we did our 3 stars for the offense. He was behind Omarion just because Omarion's so decorated, and Willie is too. He's first team All-America. So he loves football. He loves to compete. He's a mauler. There are variations of maulers at every position. There are Willie Lampkins at every position. That's what they're looking for. This kid from UConn fits it entirely. Guys that come in unranked, nobody else wanted them. We hear the stories about Elijah Huzzy, nobody wanted him. Let's go play in the NFL. You go back and look at the portal work for Carolina the last several years. Tez Walker started out at North Carolina Central because nobody wanted him. He went to the MAC. He excelled there at Kent State. And then he's in the NFL. Elijah Huzzy is going to play in the NFL. Spencer Rowland at Harvard comes to Carolina. He was on an NFL taxi squad this year. You've got Stick Lane, who was a really good player, was at Georgia State. I mean, I could go on and on and on. We know we know all the examples. Who was the best defensive player on the Florida State team that was undefeated last year? A guy from Albany. Started his career playing for the Albany Great Danes. They're all over the place. Belichick knows this, and when they evaluate film, they see things that we don't see. I'll never see it. And they talk to people about these kids. If someone from Belichick's staff calls up a coach at Louisiana Monroe and wants to learn about an offensive lineman, the guy's going to answer the questions. He's going to be honest with him because he wants to get another call from Belichick or one of his people. Coaches, when they talk about their players, they're incredibly honest about the pros and the cons. So they're learning, they're gathering information. They want to know who fits from a cultural standpoint of competitiveness. Do they love football? Are they about winning? And do they have achievement from where they are? Some guys haven't played as much from the bigger schools. They'll bring them in, slap them on the books, if you will, and see how it goes. And maybe a change of scenery sometimes is good for them. But, they have brought in a guy from South Carolina, Washington,
Alabama.
Michigan State, Alabama. I mean, they're bringing them in because they're all over the place. And there's various levels of experience at some of these different schools. But Belichick and his staff aren't going to miss anything on these kids. So if they bring them in and they show a lot of interest, they're looking at them as, how can they help us this year? How can they help us for a couple of years?
Mm-hmm.
So you bring in a kid this year for 1 year, he's got 1 year of eligibility. There's certain needs they directly have right now. Like they've got to get defensive line. They still need more defensive linemen. So they'll go after a lot of 1 year kids to plug in there as some of the young ones develop and as they have a chance to maybe go out in the portal next year in the spring and bring in some more. There's a method to this that they have already launched and that I think from my vantage point and talking to kids, portal players and high school kids, they know exactly what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not kind of wading through the weeds right now, trying to figure out where the watering hole is and where the road is. They know where they are and they know where everything is. They don't need a compass and they're going after what they want. And I find that to be very, very interesting, and it should be very encouraging to Carolina fans.
Yeah, there's a clear plan. There's a clear way in which they're going forward and getting these kids. And let me just say this too. Not every kid that Bill Belichick brings in from whether it's a regular recruiting class or the portal is going to be a success. That's just not how this works. It's not just a him thing. It's everywhere across the country. You're not going to go, let's say you bring in 15 kids in the portal and 10 in the 20 in the next class. Not all 25 of those guys is going to be a success. And we're not saying they are. But what we're trying to illustrate here is, again, the messaging and what Bill Belichick's trying to accomplish by bringing these kids in, but also kind of understanding maybe what his thought process is with bringing guys like Holy Cross and Delaware. Because, again, I don't have a problem with it, but I know fans do a lot of the times. Not necessarily right now because it's Bill Belichick and that effect's still there, but I think there is always a little bit of, why are you bringing a guy in from a lower-level school? But when you peel back the layers, it makes a ton of sense.
I would advise everybody to, if you got a little bit of time, go look at every NFL roster. Don't look at the players' names. Go look in the far right and see where they went to school.
It's crazy.
Just do that. That'll make you feel better about a lot of this.
Oh, yeah, it's insane how many guys come from lower-level schools. It really is. Looking forward a little bit, AJ.
I don't know where you're going with this very quickly, but we do want to talk about some of the specifics that they're telling each kid as well.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about that. I was going to go off. I want to talk about something else before we head out, but I appreciate you bringing me back to that.
Fast, because we want to make sure that we've talked to a lot of guys in the portal and quite a few, most of the high school kids that they've talked to the last couple of days that they visited. And when he says, I ask, okay, what did Bill Belichick tell you that he likes about you, that they like about your game? All of them say, hey, you could fit the scheme we want to play and you fit in our culture. We want to help. We want you to help us change the culture. That's what he's telling the portal kids. The high school kids will come into a culture that's already been changed. Some of the portal kids that have committed, players, I keep calling them kids, players that have committed have said that one of the main missions is they want them to help change the culture. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take just a head coach. It's got to bring in kids that are going to go, out and change culture. Players that are going to be on time all the time. They're going to get in the extra work. They're going to encourage teammates, but at the same time want to beat their brains in and practice it in a drill. That's what he wants. And he wants it at a different level. He wants them to essentially practice and work each day as if their next meal depends on it. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of players out there that might come in and they go elsewhere and people, Bill lost that guy. Maybe in cases he did, but maybe in a lot of those cases they get a vibe, shaking a hand, talking to one of these young men and like, you know what? I'm not sure he's right for our culture. Mm-hmm. Which is what the basketball coach did back in the spring with the big men. He didn't think those guys were for the culture because they were going like this instead of like that when they met him. I've told that 1,000 times. So Belichick is kind of getting the same feel. So it's about building a whole new culture. I talked about the earthquake underneath the Keenum Football Center. That to me is cultural foundation. We're seeing that in play.
Yeah,
it's fascinating to watch. And even though it's January 8th and we're exhausted and we're not used to having this kind of grind for that long with both sports, it's very, very fascinating to cover this and to learn what we learn every day about this guy's approach to what he's doing. It's a fascinating, fascinating thing.
Yeah.
And if he's putting in this much effort doing that, his eyes aren't other places. Come on.
Yeah.
That's silly.
Yeah, come on, guys. Let's be serious for a second. No, I'm glad you brought that up because I think culture is going to be it's been the key word of this podcast. I think it's going to be a key word of this off season going into his first season. Heck, I think it's going to be the key word for his first couple of seasons because that's what he has to build, and because that's what this program's missed for so long. I mean, it's not going to be easy to do. No one's saying it is, but when I think what you can see what Bill Belichick did is a positive sign. What the boxes he's checking so far is it's okay. From day one, the focus is we have to shift this culture, and we're not just speculating on that. We're hearing it, and we're putting these things together from sources and other things, but from what we're hearing from these kids directly. You don't go in a conversation with a transfer portal kid and talk about culture if your number one mission in one of your first missions at Carolina as a coach is changing that culture. That what's the point in that? This culture has to be built, and it's built by the guys you bring in. So I think
and he's fueling it by his own efforts. Mm-hmm. That's why he's out on the road. Mm-hmm. How can he talk about having that culture if he's not willing to go out on the road?
That's a good point.
And the other thing is, part of that process is he's not sitting there talking about winning Super Bowls. He knows that the kids know. But he told a couple of the portal players that we've talked to, said he made a clear point to say, I have done nothing in college. Like I'm here to do something in college. Whatever I've done in the past doesn't carry over here. So he's in that same I got to prove myself mindset that he's looking for. The difference is he's come down.
Yeah.
But there's still something he wants to prove. Mm-hmm. And based on everything I can read, and we've talked to a lot of players, kids/players and other people, he is determined to show he can do this. Mm-hmm. And not just to show, he's not trying to prove anything to anybody. He wants to do it for himself and for the good of everybody around him. I think it's a very fascinating thing. So he's showing them what culture is by getting out there and doing that stuff.
Absolutely. By
going to the schools, and he's not going to stop. He's not just going to, hey, I'm going out there for a few days in state and that's it. It's going to do more because it's what has to be done to be successful. He's not going to do the Deion Sanders approach, which a lot of people said he would do. And I wondered if he would or not.
Yeah, me too.
But he's not going to do that. It works for Deion. That's fine. Deion had a good year at Colorado this year, so good for him. He's proven a lot of people wrong. Good for him. Mm-hmm. Belichick's going to do it the Belichick way. And those hours burning the midnight oil when you find the Julian Edelmans of the world, he's going to apply the same thing to this.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the many reasons that Carolina fans should be excited about what he can potentially do in Chapel Hill. Last thing, AJ, before we head out, I want to talk this just for a second because obviously it's another very top of mind topic with Carolina football right now. What's taking so long with the staff build, man? Is it solely because we've heard this, and heck, you might have even said it at some point. Is it solely, wait till the NFL regular season ends, which it just did, wait for these kind of bowl games to get wrapped up, and then you'll see a lot more movement? I know there has been staff additions, a lot of behind the scenes player personnel kind of guys, but I'm talking about position coaches, coordinators, that kind of stuff. When do you think that's something that maybe starts to ramp up a little bit soon now that these seasons have kind of ended, or how do you see that situation?
It has already. There are more and more people showing up to Chapel Hill. Mm-hmm. And they just don't have the same process in announcing a new hire as they had before because they don't have a media relations person. And hell, Bill may not even give a crap, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't even know.
He might not, yeah.
My only interaction with him was the press conference. We haven't gotten a chance to have any interaction with him other than that. So I don't know the man at all in any way. other than what I'm learning the way everybody else would learn about him. There's a lot of people to hire because he's going to have a much larger staff than Mac had, from coaches to people in the scouting department, which is the personnel department, to analysts all over the place. It's a much bigger operation, so there's got a lot of people to hire. And I think that, and I don't mean to demean anybody else out there, but a lot of coaches, when they're looking to build a staff, if a dude with experience says, yes, I'll work with you, okay, come on board. Mm-hmm. Belichick can be choosier because a lot of people will be willing to work with him. Mac hired a lot of good people. A lot of people, hey, I want to work with the Hall of Famer. Well, Belichick's on a different level. So a lot of people are going to be interested in working for him, so he doesn't have to take the first yes. Mm-hmm. He can wait. Mm-hmm. He can wait for the right guy. Some he already knows probably they're going to work with him. He's waiting for their seasons to end, both college and pro. There's still some very important games to be played in both levels. Yeah. So he's not in a rush. He's accumulating players. They're acquiring players without having a full staff. We do ask the kids who the position coach is going to be. We've learned about some hirings that way. And like the Moses Cabrera, we had that on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Keeping Amber, the nutritionist, we've had that on Sunday, which is a very important move by Belichick. She's phenomenal at what she does. So, but we're hearing all kinds of other stuff about like changing the chefs in the football center. I mean, it is there is nothing that Bill Belichick is going to miss. Mm-hmm. And his people are going to miss. Michael Lombardi, got to throw him in there too, because he's his guy, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no need to rush. They'll have a full staff ready to roll by spring practice. They haven't even scheduled spring practice yet.
I know.
Usually by now we know about when spring practice is going to start.
So different than what we've been accustomed to the last 5-6 years, especially under Mac.
Yeah, but once everything's in place, I think it'll become a lot more like so many others.
Oh, of course, yeah. It's just it's such a fluid situation, using that word again, that you know.
And I understand, by the way, why he's not meeting with us, because all we're gonna do is ask questions about who you're gonna hire.
Exactly. Yeah, you might as well let it play out.
Wait, once he has a full staff, I'm sure he'll meet with us then, and we'll get to ask a lot of questions, and we'll find out more about the method behind the madness. But he's in no rush. He doesn't need to be in a rush. He's already got kids that want to go there. High school kids want to go there. I mean, I thought it was interesting. Some of the dudes he visited, these are guys that clearly he said no to North Carolina. They like Leo Delaney, for example, who blocks for Zaid Lott down in Charlotte. I talked to him at the Rivals 5-star camp in Jacksonville, Florida, back in June, and he listed 1,000 reasons why he would love to go to North Carolina, but he ended up not going to North Carolina. I can't actually remember off the top of my head where he committed, but there he is with a photograph with Bill Belichick the other day. He can't sign until next December, at least right now. I guess that rule hasn't been fully passed yet, I guess, where they can sign just about any time. There's some murkiness there with that. Belichick's going after those kids. Mm-hmm. Xavier Griffin Hayes, remember what happened with him?
Yes.
First guy I went and visited. Yeah. So these kids, if they're not interested, they would say not interested.
Yeah.
But they're interested. Absolutely. And they're tweeting out photos, thanking them to come. They do that with a lot of coaches, but it's different when you do it with Bill Belichick. Like a different level of responsibility when you tweet that out.
It hits a little bit different when you got Bill Belichick in a photo. Yeah, it just does. That's just what he is, and that's because of how much success he's had in the game. So I think that's a good place to wrap this one up. Yeah. I think that was everything we wanted to hit on. I'm trying to go through my head and make sure we didn't miss anything. I think that was about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about
everything's so fluid. It's hard to,
We'll talk about other personnel. And by the way, guys, when a player says he's entering the NFL draft, he has no eligibility left, it's not a story. I don't understand why they do that. You've got no eligibility left, and I'm entering the NFL draft, and then there are people out there writing articles about someone entering the NFL draft. No one that is in our realm. I find it funny. Just understand that, well, like, where's Josh Harris going to go?
I'm glad you said that.
Where is Stick Lane going to go?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, man.
Josh Harris, real nice guy. Stick Lane, I love talking to Stick Lane. Great personality. Stick Lane, I could see being some dude who's a really good high school coach one day.
Yeah.
he's got that written all over him. Josh Harris plays a piano. He's got a couple of kids. He seems like a teddy bear kind of dad. He seems like a really good guy. But where are they going to go? Of course they're going to go try the NFL. It's not new. It's just we have to. I'm not being critical of them, but we have to let the world know of every move we make sometimes. And a lot of people don't understand. They read because one reason I'm bringing this up because a couple people asked me, "Why aren't you running articles on that? How come you missed that? Stick Lane's going pro, didn't you know? Where was he going to go?"
It's like no more eligibility. He's either going to the pros or he's going to go home and.
Of course, he's not going to the NFL because he's got no eligibility left.
Yeah,
if you have eligibility left, that's different.
Mm-hmm. And if we were running a front page article for every little thing like that had happened, we'd have 7,000 articles on the front page every day. We'd
spend so much time on that crap, we wouldn't do the juicy stuff with actual information and intel.
And if you were on our message boards, AJ, you would see a lot of this stuff. We put tweets in there when guys declare and guys transfer. I mean, it would not just because we're not running something on the front page doesn't mean it's not in our message board somewhere.
We have a lot more stuff than just the tweets, though, too. With a lot of them.
Yeah. 100%.
So it's just kind of funny. And I'm saying that because people have asked me in the last few days. So, and by the way, I think Stick Lane has a chance to play in the NFL.
Yeah, I think he does too.
Josh Harris will be in a camp somewhere.
I'm very intrigued to see what guys.
I think they got quite a few guys. Look, last year's team that started 6-0 and finished 8-4, they had 6 rookies in the NFL this year.
I know. Guys you wouldn't expect either, British Brooks being one of them. Even if anybody really saw that coming necessarily when you looked at his production in college. Maybe if you dug a little bit deeper into it, it makes a little more sense. But even had some surprising guys. So, yeah, I think there'll be a couple maybe surprising guys this year, too, that end up making rosters. And, good luck to all of them in the next steps.
Kamen.
Be busy.
Kamen.
Yeah, Kamen. Huzzy.
Kamen, Huzzy, Amarian, Bryson.
Power Eccles, potentially.
I don't know. Power's a iffy. John Copenhaver will make a roster.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe Des Evans, Kevin Hester. They go to an NFL camp. They blow up. I think Ritchie has a chance. They have a lot of guys that are kind of borderline. The borderline ones we can play on this, but Power, Evans, Ritchie, Hester. Lampkin, I think Lampkin won't get drafted, but he'll make a roster.
I think he has to. Yeah.
Yeah. So
too good not to.
I think J.J. Jones is a borderline guy. They have a lot of borderline guys.
Yeah.
They have some taxi squad guys. I don't know what they call it anymore. I call it taxi squad because I'm old.
I like that, actually. I like that. Taxi squad. I might steal that. I kind of like that. Never heard that before until you said it today.
Really? What do they call it now? They call it the practice squad or something?
Yeah, practice squad. It's what I've always heard it as.
It's always called the taxi squad because I think, they would hold them. They were able back in the day to kind of someone's injured, you can't pull them up. They play a couple of games. Now it's very different. When I covered the Panthers for a while, it was pretty interesting how some guys would have a regular job but still work out the facilities, and then someone got hurt and they play 3 or 4 games. They get game checks in the NFL. So you are working a regular job, making $14 an hour in 2013, and next thing you get 4 game checks and they're $64,000 a game or something like that. $32,000 a game. It's like, wow.
It's a lot of money.
Give me like 6 games a year and I'm good.
Yeah, you're chilling. Absolutely, man. It'll be very fascinating to see what Carolina guys make rosters and everything. And obviously we'll continue to cover that.
Totally deviated from the show.
No, man, we tend to do that quite often. We've done well today.
Let's end this because I got so much work to do.
Yeah, me too. You're not the only one, man. We'll go ahead and get the heck out of here. I've been Jacob Turner.
Mama, look at the time.
He's been Andrew Jones. You can tell by that reaction. We need to go ahead and get the heck out of here. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe on the race to 20K. All of it helps. Take a second to subscribe if you haven't already. We asked you in the beginning. We're going to pester you and ask you again. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And we appreciate you guys watching as always. Keep it locked to illustrated.com for all your football, basketball, and recruiting coverage from the University of North Carolina. And we'll see y'all next time. Thanks.